Before we dive into this crazy story, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Maybe a sleepy street in Vermont, a bustling downtown in Chicago, or a cozy mountain cabin in Colorado. I love seeing just how far these wild Karen tales of chaos and karma can reach. The sound hit like a gunshot. Glass shattering, sharp and violent, echoed through the quiet suburban street. I dropped the wrench I'd been holding in the garage and froze, the cold metal clattering against the concrete floor. For a moment, my brain refused to process what I'd just heard. But then came the second sound, another smash, followed by the unmistakable groan of twisted steel. My chest tightened. I ran to the garage door and yanked it open. There it was. My Rolls-Royce Phantom 8, gleaming white just this morning, now caught under a storm of destruction. Linda and Brenda, the self-appointed queens of the HOA and proud Karen sisters of our neighborhood, stood on either side of my car. Their faces burned red with rage and sweat. Each of them gripped a sledgehammer like it was an extension of their arms, and with a savage scream, they swung down again. The windshield exploded inward. A spiderweb of cracks bloomed across the once perfect glass, shards flying across the leather seats. The hood that I had polished just yesterday buckled under another bone-rattling hit. I shouted before I could think. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" My voice cracked, raw and furious, but the sisters didn't even flinch. Linda, the older one by a year, paused just long enough to sneer at me. Her blonde hair stuck to her sweaty face, her sleeveless shirt clinging as she raised the hammer again. "Finally, he comes out to watch. About time someone taught you a lesson, show off," she spat. Brenda, slightly shorter but broader, grinned through her panting. Her floral dress swayed as she lifted her hammer high, then slammed it into the side mirror, ripping it clean off. The crunch rang out across the neighborhood. For a second, I couldn't breathe. That car wasn't just a car. It was the symbol of years, no decades, of grinding, of late nights working, of sacrifices made. I had waited until 38 years old to buy something for myself that truly felt like victory. A Rolls-Royce Phantom wasn't an impulse purchase. It was my dream, parked proudly in front of my home, my name finally engraved in success. And in less than 2 minutes, these women were tearing it apart like it was a cheap toy. I stumbled forward, fists clenched, my whole body pulsing with rage. Neighbors' doors began to creak open. Curtains shifted. Faces peeked out from porches, drawn by the chaos. "Stop. Stop right now," I roared, my voice breaking. But they didn't. Linda slammed her hammer again. The windshield gave way completely, collapsing inward, glass scattering over the cream leather. Brenda swung into the hood, denting it deep enough that I could feel the pain in my chest like it was my ribs. The weight of the scene pressed down on me. 2 women destroying my dream car in broad daylight, in front of everyone. And yet the bystanders did nothing. They just watched. Some looked horrified, others just curious, like this was free entertainment on a summer afternoon. My phone was in my pocket. My fingers shook as I pulled it out. The lens caught their wild faces, their weapons, the ruined masterpiece that was once my car. I hit record. "You're done. Both of you," I shouted, forcing my voice steady. Brenda laughed, a high-pitched cackle that made my skin crawl. "Go ahead, record it. Everyone already knows that car doesn't belong here." The HOA agrees. That last part stabbed me harder than the sight of the smashed mirror. The HOA. Of course. For weeks, I had been fighting these 2 sisters over the car. At first, it was little comments tossed out at the mailbox. "That thing looks ridiculous in our neighborhood. Who are you trying to impress?" Then came the letters from the HOA, warnings about aesthetic violations and unauthorized modifications. My car wasn't violating anything. It was parked in my own driveway, perfectly within community rules. But the sisters ran the HOA like their private kingdom. They twisted every rule to their advantage. And if you crossed them, they made your life hell. I tried to reason with them. I even attended the last HOA meeting to clear things up. But every time I spoke, Linda cut me off, and Brenda mocked me from the back. "Just admit you bought a car you can't afford to keep," she had sneered. And now, here they were, proving just how far they were willing to go. A loud metallic crash snapped me back. Linda had ripped the wiper blade clean off and hurled it onto the street. Pieces of broken glass crunched under her sandals. Brenda panted, sweat dripping from her forehead as she gripped her hammer for another swing. Neighbors shouldn't have to live next to this kind of arrogance, Linda growled, glaring at me like I was a criminal. Something hot burned in my stomach. Fear, yes, but anger stronger than anything I'd felt in years. My jaw ached from clenching it. Every fiber of my being screamed to run forward, to rip the hammers from their hands, to protect what was mine. But I couldn't. Not like this. Two women swinging steel, neighbors recording on their phones. I would be the one painted as the villain if I touched them. So I stood my ground, recording, my breath coming heavy, my voice sharp. Every second of this is evidence. You'll pay for every inch of damage. That finally made Linda hesitate. She lowered the hammer slightly, her chest heaving. Brenda leaned on her weapon, a sneer stretched across her round face. You think anyone's going to take your side, she hissed. We run this neighborhood. You're just a guest. Her words slithered into me, poisonous but familiar. They had used that line before. They believed their HOA crown made them invincible. Blue and red lights flickered faintly at the end of the street. Sirens grew louder closer. The neighbors murmured. Some stepped back, suddenly eager to avoid involvement. But the sisters didn't flinch. They stood proudly beside the wreckage of my car, hammers in hand, sweat dripping down their arms, as if daring me to try stopping them. I lowered my phone slowly, my chest heaving, my knuckles white. My dream car lay ruined, dented and bleeding shards of glass onto the pavement. My neighbors whispered like it was gossip at a dinner table. And the Karen sisters smirked at me with the smug confidence of tyrants who believed they were untouchable. For the first time since I had bought that car, I felt utterly powerless. And that was the moment I decided I would never feel that way again. The sirens wailed closer, reflecting in the shattered windshield. The sisters glanced at each other, their hammers still in hand, but neither backing down. I raised my phone again, steady this time, pointing it directly at them, and whispered, so only I could hear. This isn't over. The police car rolled up with a crunch of tires against asphalt, its siren fading as two officers stepped out. Their presence should have felt like salvation, but the weight of what I had just witnessed still pressed against my chest. My Rolls-Royce Phantom stood crippled in the driveway, its windshield caved in, the hood mangled, the mirror hanging by a thread. And right beside it, Linda and Brenda leaned on their sledgehammers, panting but smiling like they'd just finished a workout. The taller officer, a man with a square jaw and mirrored sunglasses, approached cautiously. What's going on here? His eyes flicked between me, the sisters, and the wrecked car. Before I could speak, Linda jumped in, her voice shrill with practiced outrage. We were defending ourselves. He came out screaming, threatening us, waving his phone around. We thought he was going to attack us. The words nearly knocked the breath out of me. I stumbled forward, phone raised, shaking with rage. That's a lie. Look at the car. Look what they've done. Brenda tossed her head back, scoffing. That thing was illegally parked. It's been a violation for weeks. We've warned him. We've sent letters. Today he snapped and came after us. We had to protect ourselves. It was surreal, hearing the sheer confidence with which they twisted reality. I wanted to shout until my throat tore, but instead, I forced myself to breathe and tap the phone screen. The video played, the sound of shattering glass filling the silence. The officers leaned closer as Linda swung the hammer into the windshield, her face clear as day, Brenda ripping the side mirror off with a triumphant grin. The female officer's eyes narrowed. That's very different from what you just told us. For the first time, the sisters' smugness cracked. Linda shifted on her feet, clutching the hammer tighter. Brenda muttered, he edited that. He's making it look worse. But the neighbors had stepped closer now, some of them emboldened by the flashing lights. A middle-aged man from across the street called out. I saw the whole thing. He didn't touch them. They just went crazy on his car. A woman beside him nodded, clutching her phone. I recorded it too. The sisters turned, their faces paling. For once, they didn't have control of the narrative. The officers exchanged a look, then moved to separate everyone. They took statements, inspected the car, and finally, after a tense half hour, told me charges would likely be filed. But their tone was cautious, almost apologetic. "We'll submit the report," the male officer said. "But these things take time. Property damage cases usually go through civil court." I stared at him, struggling to understand. Civil court? They destroyed a Rolls-Royce in broad daylight. "You have them on video." He sighed. "And that video will help. But the system's slow. Don't expect an arrest tonight." As they drove away, leaving me with nothing but paperwork and a total dream, Linda and Brenda leaned close enough that only I could hear. Linda's voice was low and venomous. "Told you. Nobody's taking your side." Brenda smirked, resting the hammer on her shoulder. "Better sell that thing for scrap and get yourself a Honda. Something more neighborly." They walked off together, shoulders brushing, their laughter trailing behind them like a trail of gasoline waiting for a spark. The neighbors drifted back into their homes, murmuring quietly, glancing at me with pity, but doing nothing more. And there I was, standing in front of a car worth more than most of their mortgages, reduced to rubble by two women who thought the world revolved around them. I pulled out my phone again, opened the video, and replayed it. Each shattering sound drove deeper into me, not as pain this time, but as fuel. They thought they had won because they weren't in handcuffs tonight. They thought the HOA protected them, that their influence would bury the truth. But I wasn't about to let my life be trampled under their arrogance. The next morning, insurance adjusters arrived. One man shook his head as he circled the Phantom, his clipboard tapping against his thigh. "This is bad. Very bad. We're likely looking at a total loss here. 6 figures in damage, easy." 6 figures. My jaw tightened. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was calculating. I filed the claim, but I also made sure every detail of the sisters' rampage was included in the report. Photos, videos, witness statements, everything lined up. Then I contacted a lawyer. He was blunt. "With the evidence you've got, this is an open and shut case. They'll be liable for damages. But cases like this move slow. You want a faster sting, you'll need to hit them where it hurts: public image, community standing. That's where their power is." Those words stuck in my head long after the call ended. I knew the sisters cared about control more than anything. The HOA wasn't just a club to them. It was their stage, their crown, their way of bossing around neighbors who were too tired or too polite to fight back. If they lost credibility there, they lost everything. So I started setting the trap. First, I clipped together the clearest footage from that night. The smirks on their faces, the hammers raised, the windshield collapsing under their blows. I didn't upload it publicly yet, but I kept it ready. A grenade with the pin already pulled, just waiting. Second, I reached out to neighbors privately. Some were hesitant at first, afraid of retaliation, but when I showed them the footage, most agreed the sisters had gone too far. A handful even offered to testify if needed. Third, I drafted a formal complaint to the HOA board, demanding an emergency meeting. My tone was calm, precise, backed by video evidence. I copied every single board member and my lawyer. The sisters must have sensed what I was doing because the harassment didn't stop. They strutted around the neighborhood like nothing had happened, gossiping loudly within earshot. I overheard Brenda one evening telling another neighbor, "He's just jealous. We've been here 15 years. He thinks buying a fancy car makes him king." Pathetic. Linda added, "If the board doesn't shut him down, we'll make sure he regrets ever moving here." Every word fueled me further. One evening, as I walked the ruined driveway, I noticed a small rock lodged under one of the remaining tires. A rock with words scrawled on it in black marker, "Show OFF." I held it in my palm, the edges biting into my skin. That was their message, a reminder they thought they could keep pushing without consequence. But they were wrong. The emergency HOA meeting was set for Friday night. I prepared meticulously. My lawyer helped me arrange the evidence in order, each clip timed perfectly. Witnesses agreed to attend. Even the police officer who had taken my statement said he'd show up if summoned. The night arrived. The community center buzzed with chatter, folding chairs lined up in neat rows. The sisters sat front and center, their floral dresses neat, their hair brushed back, their expression smug. Linda crossed her arms, whispering to Brenda, who chuckled like they were already celebrating a win. I sat quietly, laptop in front of me, phone buzzing with messages of support from neighbors, too afraid to attend but eager to see justice. The board president cleared his throat. We're here tonight to address a serious allegation of misconduct involving 2 of our members. His voice trembled. Mr. Jacobs has requested to present evidence. I stood, my pulse hammering in my ears, and connected my laptop to the projector. The screen lit up, the room falling silent. The first smash rang out. My car's windshield spiderwebbed across the screen. Linda's face caught mid-swing. Gasps erupted. Brenda's laughter filled the speakers, her hammer crashing into the mirror. Murmurs spread like wildfire. People shifted uncomfortably, whispering, shaking their heads. The sisters leapt to their feet. This is taken out of context. Linda barked. Context. I shot back, louder than I intended. The context is 2 grown women destroying a neighbor's car in broad daylight. I let the final clip play. The moment the police lights reflected in the shattered glass, the sisters smirking like they owned the world. Then I turned to the crowd. This is who's been running our HOA. These are the people fining us, threatening us, pretending to enforce rules while breaking the law themselves. If this can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. The room erupted in voices. Some angry, some shocked. But the tide was clear. The sisters weren't laughing anymore. Their faces were pale, their eyes darting, their mouths moving, but no words coming out. And yet, as satisfying as it was to see their armor crack, I knew this was only the beginning. The board would deliberate, the community would talk, the law would grind forward. But my plan wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. I looked at them one last time, my lips curling into something close to a smile. Because I knew what was coming next would tear down the little empire they had built brick by brick. Friday night arrived like a storm, heavy with anticipation. The community center buzzed with hushed whispers and shifting chairs, every attendee aware that this meeting could change the neighborhood forever. I carried my laptop like a weapon, each step purposeful, heart hammering in rhythm with my plan. Linda and Brenda entered first, side by side, grins plastered on their faces, their floral dress and sleeveless top crisp, hair meticulously brushed. They exuded confidence, arrogance radiating from every movement. They thought they were untouchable, and that belief was their vulnerability. The board president called the meeting to order. We are here to address serious allegations of misconduct involving HOA members, he began, voice taut with discomfort. His eyes flicked nervously toward the sisters, who sat primly, hands folded, pretending calm. Mr. Jacobs has requested to present evidence. I connected my laptop to the projector, the hum of electronics filling the silent room. The first frame hit the screen, a shattered windshield, glass splintering outward. Linda mid-swing with her sledgehammer, Brenda laughing with triumph. The room inhaled collectively. Gasps, whispers, and stifled murmurs rolled like waves. I felt the energy shift immediately. The tide was turning. Linda shot up, her chair scraping loudly against the tile floor. This is manipulated, edited, completely out of context. Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the first cracks in her armor. Brenda leaned forward, lips curled into a forced smile, her hands tightening around her lap. I pressed play on the next clip. The sledgehammers collided with the hood, dents forming with sickening precision. The leather interior reflected shards of glass, every detail sharp, undeniable. The sisters had no defense. The room leaned in, silent except for the occasional murmur of shock. The neighbors I had quietly rallied whispered among themselves, their collective disbelief fueling the momentum I had built. This is real, I said, my voice steady now, resonant with conviction. This is exactly what happened. Two HOA members, wielding sledgehammers, destroyed my property in broad daylight. And this is what they think of the rules, of neighbors, of law itself. I watched as the sisters exchanged a glance. The smugness wiped clean from their faces, replaced with something raw: fear, realization, panic. The longer the footage played, the more the truth became undeniable. The HOA, the community, the witnesses, I had them all on my side. The board president adjusted his glasses nervously, glancing at a legal document in front of him. Based on this evidence and testimonies provided by witnesses, the board will be taking immediate action. The members involved will be removed from all positions and fined for damages. Linda's face went pale. Her grip on the chair tightened so fiercely that knuckles whitened. Brenda's jaw dropped slightly, eyes darting around the room, seeking an escape that didn't exist. The murmurs grew louder, now tinged with satisfaction, a subtle chorus of justice rising in the air. I leaned forward, voice low but sharp. And the damages? Not just the fines. The insurance claim has been processed. They will be held personally liable for the full cost. 6 figures. Every last cent. Brenda's hand flew to her mouth. Linda's face contorted with disbelief. The room erupted into whispers and soft clapping, neighbors exchanging looks of shock and vindication. The sisters slumped slightly, the weight of consequences finally pressing down on them. "You think you're untouchable," I said, pacing slowly in front of the screen, phone discreetly recording the reactions. "But arrogance is a double-edged sword. You thought destroying my car would make a statement, but it just exposed your cruelty, your greed, your entitlement." The legal advisor from my side stepped forward, confirming everything in black and white. The HOA bylaws have been violated. The insurance claim covers replacement costs, and the defendants are liable. Civil action has been filed. Their personal assets may be used to cover restitution if necessary. Linda shook her head, disbelief etched across her features. Brenda's floral dress seemed suddenly too bright, too innocent a contrast to the chaos they had wrought. I watched as they realized their reign was over. No more control. No more unchecked power. No more smirking at neighbors from the safety of authority. Neighbors started speaking up, giving their own accounts. A few recounted previous incidents: petty harassment, unjust complaints, intimidation. Each story layered onto the footage, an avalanche of truth that buried the sisters' defense. I stayed quiet, letting the weight of everything unfold naturally, letting the audience see the unraveling of their facade. One of the older women, a longtime resident who had always avoided confrontation, finally spoke. "We've lived here for decades. We tolerated their behavior because we were scared. But now we see what happens when they go too far. It's shocking." The sisters didn't respond. No amount of yelling or manipulation could undo what was now publicly laid bare. Their empire had collapsed in front of an audience they had once commanded. Outside the community center, I watched as their car, a modest SUV, was loaded onto a tow truck for impoundment. Word had spread online, my footage now circulating across neighborhood social media groups. Memes, comments, even short clips re-uploaded by others painted them as the infamous Sledgehammer Sisters. The irony was poetic. Their own actions had fueled a public spectacle that humiliated them in a way no private complaint ever could. Back inside, the board wrapped up the meeting with finality. Effective immediately, Linda and Brenda are removed from all HOA responsibilities. They are barred from attending board meetings or community events until further notice. Fines and restitution will be processed in accordance with legal proceedings. The sisters sat silently, flushed and trembling. Their hands rested on their laps, sledgehammers conspicuously absent, their posture defeated. The community, once fearful, now looked relieved, empowered even, like a weight had been lifted from the neighborhood. I took a deep breath, finally allowing a small smile to creep across my face. The car was gone, replaced eventually by insurance compensation, but the victory wasn't about the vehicle. It was about control reclaimed, justice served, and the arrogance of 2 women dismantled piece by piece in the most public way possible. Walking home later that evening, I passed the houses, noticing nods of acknowledgement, subtle waves, even a few smiles from neighbors who had never spoken to me before. The streets felt lighter somehow, the air cleaner, as if the neighborhood itself had exhaled. I returned to the driveway, imagining my next car parked proudly, untouched by fear or intimidation. The memory of the sledgehammers still burned in my mind, a vivid reminder of the chaos that had been and the order I had restored. Weeks later, the sisters' personal affairs became a topic of hushed discussion. HOA fines, civil claims, and social media notoriety forced them to sell assets to cover costs. Their influence evaporated almost overnight. They walked through the neighborhood cautiously, aware that everyone had seen who they really were. I stood in my new driveway one sunny morning, the Phantom 8 gleaming once again, polished to perfection. Neighbors waved, some stopping to compliment the car, others just smiling knowingly. The sisters driving by caught a glimpse. Their faces tightened. No words were exchanged, but the message was clear. Justice had been served. Karma had arrived not quietly, but with thunder. I stepped back, letting the sunlight glint off the hood, and whispered to myself, a mix of triumph and irony. They thought they could destroy what I worked for. Instead, they destroyed themselves. And somewhere deep down, I knew that this wasn't just about a car or fines. It was about boundaries, about consequences, about a neighborhood finally learning that entitlement has a price, and arrogance always meets its match. Even as the summer breeze rustled the leaves and the quiet street returned to normal, the story of that day, sledgehammers, shattered glass, and ultimate payback would linger. A cautionary tale for anyone who believed their power could go unchecked. The sisters' empire had crumbled, my reputation solidified, and the neighborhood reclaimed its peace. Yet in that fleeting moment, I allowed myself a wry smile, knowing that life had a way of rewarding patience and precision, and punishing hubris in ways both subtle and spectacular.